So he just went in and like closed it and like trying to open everything up again, and it's just
Oh my God,
his has,
yes.
yeah,
The
his
same
has,
thing.
his computer is the worst, and so sometimes he has to use mine. But I'm wondering if these laptops just aren't used to this all day, every day wear and tear, you know? Because I don't understand. I've never had, I mean, I got this laptop right when COVID started, because I knew I would, need it at home, and it's already like how the camera doesn't work, and, I don't know. Anyways. Okay, so yay, this is a fun chapter. This is where, I guess if you think of psychology in only in terms of mental illness, this is where psychology meets sexuality. So we'll cover the mental side, or the mental disorders um, of sexuality. So obviously we want to take this and view it through a lens of how do we define what is normal, okay? And we want to be careful, not to try and label everything as abnormal, or not to label everything as disordered, okay? Um, people do different things. People enjoy different activities. Just because it's not normal to you doesn't mean that it's in any way, I guess, wrong. So we do have a lot of different, or I don't want to say strange, but a lot of times we think of them as strange. So let's just try and see what these people are doing and what it is that they enjoy. Now, I know all of you all, I believe most of you, especially the two girls that are on here right now, have already taken intro. You've taken several psychology classes. So I'm not going to sit here and beat a dead horse, but we want to consider what is psychologically disordered, right? And I know Jennifer for sure. Rebecca, I know I had you for human growth, but I'm not sure if I didn't have you for intro. But we always want to consider those 3 Ds of disorders, right? The Ds. We want to see, does it cause the person distress? Okay, and you can see it right here. Does it cause the person distress? To know that a person is distressed, they will, if they have insight to their behavior or their problem, they will tell you, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be like this anymore. I want to change, but I can't. Okay, so they're showing you they don't want to do this. Some people could argue that distress can come from other ways, whether they recognize it or not. Like an alcoholic is probably not going to admit to you that they're an alcoholic, but you could argue, if they're getting arrested, if they're winding up in the hospital, if they're ruining relationships, that they are causing them distress without being cognizant of it, okay? We have the other D is dysfunction, right? So is it dysfunctional? Is it disrupting daily life? Can this person maintain a job? Can this person maintain relationships? And this one is big right here in this topic because it has to do with sexuality. So can they maintain relationships? Or is this person just down in the basement looking at porn all day? Right? If they can't hold a relationship with a real person, you could argue that that's dysfunctional. Okay, let's see. And then the third one is deviant, right? And we do not mean deviant as in a bad person. We mean deviant as, does it deviate from what is normal? Okay, is it very, very different? Is it really outside of that realm of what people consider, you know, somewhat normal? And that's the hardest part. That's the hardest one, to try and describe and even judge of what is normal. Okay, so we call them paraphilias. Okay, we call them paraphilias if it meets those criteria and they are considered disordered. Okay, the interesting thing about the paraphilias is this right here: does it cause distress or harm others? Okay, now there's some mental disorders, right, like depression or bipolar or yeah, I don't know, schizophrenia and so on. Those typically don't have a victim. There's not somebody else that they're hurting. Okay, in the sexuality realm, we do have victims sometimes. Okay, now for me, some people put that there's a fourth D. Okay, I just cover 3 Ds. Some people add a fourth D and they call that danger. I'm in the group of people that don't like to include danger because of 2 reasons. One, it gives the impression that people that have mental disorders are dangerous, and we know that that's not true. Okay, so we feel like it adds to the stigma if we include that. The other reason why I don't like it is if you are a danger to yourself or others, then you've already checked off the other 3 Ds. Okay, it's like it's
Right.
an automatic pass. All right, you are obviously causing distress to yourself. You're obviously dysfunctional, and you're obviously very, very different. So, but within this one, we can have victims. And so that we want to consider that. Okay. Oh, here's a little bit more on that. I didn't know that this slide was going to read my brain and have this here. So here's the other thing. We can also ask ourselves about distress. If this behavior or desire, like it says here, is required for sexual arousal, do they need it in order to become aroused? So we could think of a fetish, somebody who likes shoes. Okay, they might really like shoes. That's just maybe a kink, right? It might just be a fetish. But is it required for them to become aroused? Does there have to be a shoe present for them to perform? Okay, and that you could argue is dysfunctional, right? They need to be able to become aroused in other scenarios. And then, of course, is there a victim? That's almost like an automatic pass, okay, to that. Okay, here are 8 specific paraphilias that are described by the APA, and this is included in the DSM-5. Okay, so we'll go over these. We have the masochism. This is where you like to want pain inflicted on you. Okay, sadism is where you like to inflict pain on somebody else. These relationships actually work quite well, right? A sadomasochist, and if they're not hurting anybody else and there's no victim and they're both consenting adults, then a sadomasochist relationship is probably pretty strong. All right. Transvestic disorder, we will go over this. This is not transgender. This is not drag queens. Okay, these are guys usually that have to dress up in ladies' undergarments or something like that. And then it has that ending to the sentence, in order to become aroused. They have to have on those, they have to dress up as the other sex in order to become aroused. Okay. Exhibitionist, this is not a stripper. This is not a porn star. They might be, okay, but they're not all of them. This is somebody who, this is your flasher, Okay, this is somebody who flashes people. They usually get off on the shock and the disgust that they cause in the victim. This one is a victim. This one, or I'm sorry, this one has a victim. Okay, because usually you don't go ask somebody for consent to flash them. Okay, that kind of takes the joy out of it, right? A voyeur is somebody who likes to watch. These are your peeping toms, okay? These people also have a victim, all right? They usually don't ask for your consent. Frauderism, this is one of my favorite, frauderistic disorder. This is the people who grab you and grope you and rub up against you without your knowledge, without your consent, and usually in a crowded scenario to where you don't know who it is that did it, okay? And then of course we know pedophiles, okay? These from exhibitionist down all have a victim, okay? That's not to say that these cannot, okay? Of course they can, but we'll evaluate that in just a minute. Let's see, yeah, sometimes they say it's often an exaggeration from some sort of desire or behavior that people liked, and they've just kind of taken it further and further and further. And that's a pretty good way to think about perhaps the paraphilias. By far more men than women have paraphilias. Okay, so when I keep saying men, I'm not trying to you know, I don't know. I'm not trying to classify or be sexist or anything like that. It's just, it's like 99 to 1. Okay, it's mostly men. And you know, they like what they're doing, obviously, or they wouldn't do it. And sometimes you'll see even in the pedophiles, they believe that they're of service or they are providing a benefit to their victims. So we'll talk about that. This is the prevalence of the disorders in the clinical population. Okay, now we need to think about this off the bat, just right away. These are people who are in the clinical setting, therefore they have either sought out treatment on their own or they were caught and they were forced into treatment. Okay, so we don't know how many people are out there that just kind of do this in the general population. Okay, child molestation is going to get you in trouble. Okay, and that's why we believe we have off the charts representation of child molestation in the clinical population. Okay, these people were probably caught and they were forced into treatment. Voyeurs, you're probably going to get caught also. Okay, these are people who set up cameras in bathrooms, set up cameras in changing rooms, you know, climb a tree to look in your window, things like that. Exhibitionist, your flashers, you know, that's very common also. And if you get caught, you're going to wind up in treatment also. So that's why we have exhibitionism here. Fetishism, this is a huge group right here. There's lots of different fetishes. So it depends on what they're doing and why they're in the clinical population. Public masturbation, you can't do that, right? You can't do that, so they get caught. Frauderism, right? Rubbing up on people, grabbing people, groping people, you can't do that, you'll get caught also. Zoophilia, anyone want to take a stab at what zoophilia is?
A propensity to be sexually aroused from sexual interactions with animals.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
exactly right. Right, commonly out on the street called bestiality, right? So yeah, the technical term is zoophilia. And do you know which is the #1 animal?
I
No.
don't. But is
I
it
don't want
horses or
to.
dogs?
It's
Oh
dogs. Oh,
Yeah.
my God.
I know, it's so sad. Um, you know, it's nice to see that there's not very many people. However, and this is a really bad joke, but it's true. Their victims aren't talking, right?
Right.
We don't know. These victims will talk, right? They'll rat you out. An animal can't say anything, but it is important to know that if you are caught doing that, you will be charged with animal abuse. Okay. Obscene telephone calls. This is fun, right? Obscene telephone calls. You don't really get them anymore because, well, y'all are too young, but way back in the day, you just answered the phone and you had no idea who was on the other end. We didn't have caller ID. You didn't have anything like that. So growing up as a kid, it was a lot of fun because you can make prank calls all the time. But, you know, sometimes you would get people that would call and say really disgusting things or breathe heavily and stuff like that. That's kind of gone away because of caller ID and all of those new features that we have. However, call centers that take incoming calls say that they get this all the time. So these people have to sit there and listen to guys be gross and weird on the phone. All right, transvestic fetishism, obviously rape, that's going to, you know, get you in trouble. Anyone know what this is, or do you not want to say? I'll say it. Coprophilia or urophilia?
I'm just honestly, I haven't finished reading the chapter yet.
Oh, yeah, that's
So
okay.
full disclosure,
Yeah,
I did start the chapter.
yeah.
Is that a getting sexually aroused from poop and pee?
Yes, yes. Yes, it
How do I
is.
put that?
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it. That is a great, right? Yeah, feces and urine.
Yes.
Yes. So y'all don't do that. That is nasty. That's dirty. You can get, you know, hepatitis and all kinds of stuff.
I just want to, you know, like without like revealing much about my life, I can guarantee you that's not something I do.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Promise.
I think there's quite a few people that would not do that. And you can see here, it's
Right.
even within the clinical setting, it's pretty low. But yes, please, 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 you can get all kinds of diseases. Don't do that. Necrophilia. I know we've all heard about it, right? Necrophilia is sexual whatever, you know, attraction to dead bodies.
Yeah.
And you can see here, there's not very many. And again, it's because we say that their victims aren't talking. Okay. If you are caught doing this, you will get in trouble. Okay. It's messing with a corpse. You're not allowed to do that. And there are a few hundred cases that they know of in history. Okay. With this. So, okay. Ready?
Ready.
Some of these pictures I found on my own, you know, some are in the book. So fetishism, right, is an arousal for inanimate objects or non-sexual body parts. Okay, so you know, someone who says, "Oh, I have a fetish over boobs," it's like, well, that's that's not a fetish, right? Because boobs are a sexual body part. Okay, when they're saying their toes, elbows, you know, hair, perhaps, things like that, that's more into the line of fetish. The number one fetish is shoes and feet. Okay. Adult babies, infantilism. This is also, we could argue, also a fetish. These individuals like to be taken care of like a baby, and they find oftentimes sexual pleasure in being changed. Okay. So I don't know if you could fit in there some coprophilia and urophilia. I guess it depends on what their activities are. But obviously doing this, you kind of need somebody else that's going to play the adult role, right? Who's going to take care of this person. So, you know, you could argue getting into here, we have some furries. I think I have that here. Yes. Some furries, if you hear that, these are people that, you know, are getting dressed up in costume and they, but again, you know, not necessarily everybody who dress up in costume and go to raves or nightclubs and things like that doesn't necessarily mean they have a fetish. It doesn't necessarily mean they have a paraphilia. Remember, we always want to add that part of the sentence that they need it in order to become sexually aroused. Okay. Object fetish, sometimes it's called objectphilia. Sometimes it's called, oh my gosh, I'm losing the word, something with machine. But I'm losing it. But object fetishism, this lady here is in love with the, I want to say it's the Eiffel Tower, or it could be a certain bridge. I'm not sure. This guy obviously is car. This guy is infamous. He has YouTube videos and so on, and he's in love with cars. He has the Herbie bug also that he's in love with. So this is these individuals. You know what, I'm going to try and find a YouTube video and put it up for you all. It's really fascinating. It's fascinating the extent of their mental whatever disorder. They truly feel in love with this object. They feel that the object loves them back. It's so strange. And I hate to say that, and I don't mean to offend anybody who possibly has this, but if you watch this video, you will see it's very disordered. You know, we could try and break it down and say, you know, is it that they just don't function with adults? They just can't, you know, hold a relationship with an adult? Like, what happened to them in their life that they've become in love with an inanimate object? It's fascinating.
Well, I think it's interesting that to not be able to experience love in a state of subjectivity, but only in a state of objectivity. If you're thinking about like being in love with an object,
Right.
you know, there's something
Yeah.
very interesting about that.
Yeah, but I agree with you, Rebecca, but they will say like they feel like the object loves them back.
That's
It's
so
so
interesting.
bizarre.
Huh.
It's so bizarre. Like like I just want to know what happened to them growing up, you know? Why
Right.
such a disconnect with another human? And I agree with you. I mean, because obviously we know the object doesn't love them back. So, you know, for them not to have that, not to experience that.
Yeah.
But I guess if you don't know, you don't know, right? And if you've never experienced it, then they don't know what we're talking about. Um, but I guess just a complete distrust maybe of humans and knowing that these objects won't leave them, they won't hurt them. Um, I don't know. That's an interesting population, that's for sure. This is just showing what I was talking about, how shoes and feet make up a large portion of our fetishes. You know, and obviously the behavior of others, you know, the infantilism, the furries could kind of go into this classification here. External objects, you know, balloons is a big group of people, latex, I don't know, I'm probably missing a whole bunch of things. And then social behavior, you could also kind of argue that this is the furries and adult babies and things like that. Okay, so here is my, I did this just so we can be sure to, um, we need to stop calling transgenders transvestites. It's not appropriate, it's not nice, and it's technically wrong, okay? So transvestite, right, or what we would say like a transvestic fetishism is somebody who gets off on wearing the clothes of the opposite sex. Okay, so right here, I like this picture of this guy because he is dressed up, but he's not doing anything sexual. I mean, I know he's in a little pose or whatever, but he's in the kitchen, and maybe he's just kind of trying it out, right? Maybe he is thinking about it, maybe he's thinking about transitioning, and so he's just in that phase where he's giving it a try. Okay, I don't know. I don't know, but that's just the picture. That's what I get from this scenario. Okay. Drag.
Doesn't look like he's getting sexual. I mean, he doesn't look like he's getting like sexual pleasure out of it. It looks like
Right.
he is just he's trying on a dress. Like you could take the same picture of me, a cis woman wearing that dress and doing that pose and taking a selfie to
Right.
see like where I'm like, oh, I've got a new dress. I want to see what it looks like on me.
Exactly, right? Like it's just kind of a normal scenario. Okay, now I don't know what he's going to do in 5 minutes, but just
Right.
from the picture, we just want to be careful with transgender. Just because they're trying on other clothes and they're exploring that, again, and I hate to keep saying it, but is it needed in order to become aroused, right? And so if his answer is no, then he's not transvestic fetish, right? He's just possibly transitioning over. Drag, from what I know, this is not sexual arousal. This is theater. This is performance. This is having a good time. Okay. Really, from what I understand, not sexual at all. They're just dressing up. Okay. They're having a good time. So we would not call that transvestic fetishism. Okay. Now this guy, I don't know, right? I don't know what's happening. It's kind of a sexual pose. He's kind of sexy. I don't know if this is what we could call a fetish, right? Again, I don't know this individual, but if he needs to wear the bra and everything so that he can become aroused, then we would call that transvestic fetishism. Okay. Oh gosh. All right. The fun stuff. Okay. Sadism and masochism. Sometimes you hear them together as sadomasochism. And then I wanted to see if there's not, I'll come back. Oh no. Sometimes you see it all together as BDSM, and that's bondage. Okay. Or like here, tied up, bondage. Dominatrix, right? Kind of situation here, the rope thing, the chain or whatever it is, and he's spanking, right? So dominatrix, sadomasochism, it all goes together. Or domination, I'm not sure what, I might have messed that up. So anyways, BDSM, sometimes you see that all together, and that usually because you get all of it together in one group. So again, like I had said, sadism, sexual arousal by inflicting pain on somebody, and masochism is sexual arousal from being the subject and receiving the pain. Okay. It's been around forever, as you can see here. I don't know how to say that, but talking about sadomasochism and so on. To me, it's whatever. If you like this, just like all the others, if this is your thing and you like this, great, right? As long as you don't have a victim, as long as nobody's getting hurt and so on. This makes me think of a case. There was a man and a wife, and she was shot. She was shot up, or well, I don't know that actually. I don't know exactly where the gun shot wound was. But anyway, she died. And the husband was saying that it was an accident, that it happened during sex, because they like to have sex with guns, and it accidentally went off. Who knows? That was either the best defense that guy could come up with, and pretty clever in that, or it was true. No matter what, it didn't work, and he's in jail. But if you're doing stuff that's unsafe, please be careful. And always, like, makes me think of Kevin Hart right here. Always have a safe word, right? Like pineapple, something that you would never say in the process of doing this. The word no does not work, because that's kind of a part of the being dominated. It's kind of the part of being humiliated and suffering if you're constantly saying no and they keep doing it. So you need a word that is like your safe word. Okay. Frauderism, I don't have a good picture for frauderism. I guess maybe I never really looked, but this is the rubbing up against, the grabbing, the groping, the brushing up against you, and in a crowded situation where you're probably not going to know who did it. This is in China, where they have subway trains that are for women only, just to avoid that scenario. Okay, now women obviously are more than allowed to go on another train or another car, but if they just want to be by themselves, they can go into one of these train cars, and the men are not allowed in there. Every time I'm in class, face to face, and I ask, has anyone had this happen to them? I usually get at least a couple of girls raise their hands, right? They get grabbed, they get their butt pinched, they get, someone reaches for something and kind of, rubs up on their boobs or something like that. This happens all the time. Now it's difficult to say whether the person doing it was in order to become aroused, or were they just being dumb and showing off for their friends or something. That's hard to say. But somebody who's doing this repeatedly in order to become aroused, we would call them a frauderer. Okay.
I've had that happen to me.
You have? Yeah, I have too.
Several times. Yeah.
What happened to you?
Well, several times.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so I, in fact, I want to say it was on a subway, and I want to say it was on the Bay Area Rapid Transit in San Francisco, California. I used to live in the Bay Area for a few years in the mid 2000s. There was, and I actually called the guy out. I started yelling at him, and because I was standing, it was crowded, and he was groping my inner thigh, and it was hard to feel. It was hard to, because I was standing, he was sitting, and it was hard to like tell where it was coming from, because I had like a bag, but I turned around and I was like, I won't say, because we're being recorded, what I said, because I got a lot of swear words.
Yeah.
But I called him out, and I was like, just yelling about it and wouldn't shut up. So other people kind of got involved, and the guy denied that he did it. He got kind of nervous looking and said, he didn't know what I was talking about or whatever. And I just let it go. And then there's been a couple other times, but I probably wouldn't. I think that there must be something that's different between frauderism and just average sexual harassment. I don't know. Right. But I was groped as a waitress by a drunk person at the sports bar I waitressed at a long time ago. Yeah. I don't think that counts. That's just your average sexual harassment.
Right. But I mean, yeah, and it's sad that it's difficult to kind of say. It's just all the same thing, right? I mean, technically frauderism, we would call sexual harassment also. It's just usually it's so difficult. Like even though in your gut, in your instinct, we could say you knew it was him. And you said, well, I just let it go, because how do you prove it? Right? How do you prove
And
it?
do I want to? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a Club 101 back when it was downtown, and, I was wearing this, this little thing, and, probably drinking too much and dancing and stuff. And I was wearing this little mini skirt, and I walked by the bar, and somebody grabbed my butt, but like, because I was wearing this mini skirt, we could just say that their fingers were in places they shouldn't have been. And I turned around so fast, but there were so many guys there, and I pushed one of them that was obviously the closest to me, and he was like, what, and it was just, they were all kind of laughing, and it was, I would never be able to prove it, and it was just, yeah, it's kind of crazy. You feel violated, and you feel like you couldn't, what could I possibly do? They were all going to deny it. No one would, so yeah, it happens a lot. It happens a lot.
Right.
So yeah, and it's not cool.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I know.
Jennifer, you were saying it happened to you too?
Oh yeah. Well, when I had your class, one time, I don't know, I think I was late. And then I got the bus. I got into the bus, and then I was sitting by the window. And then there's this guy who sat like besides me, and then he kept like getting closer to me, like crashing me into the window. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't any space. And then I just look around, like to people like, hey, like, are you seeing this? And no one was looking at me. So I was like, oh crap.
Yeah.
And then I just got nervous, and then he started like touching my knee. And then that's when I was like, this is my stop.
Oh, wow.
And then, yeah, but like no one did anything. And I was like, oh, wow, humanity.
Humanity, you let me down, right?
Yeah, I know.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I'm glad
Yeah.
you got up and left. And yeah, that's just, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Jennifer, I had a guy do a similar thing to me on a plane once. I was on a plane, and this guy who was sitting next to me on the plane, it was, and I don't know whether I can't remember now whether there was a third person or not. I was on the window and he was in the middle, and he did the same thing, like pushing, and there was an armrest, and he put his hand on my leg and was like groping my leg. And I ended up getting up to go to the bathroom, and I told the staff people that I needed to change seats.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy to think of some of the stuff that just happens. And obviously I would say, right, in all of these cases is virtually unreported. I mean, Rebecca, you asked to move seats, but I'm sure there was no report, there's no, nothing filed. And so those I feel like are very brazen, those two instances, right? With on the plane and on the bus. I mean, but I guess they feel like they're hidden, kind of, sorta, and no one's going to say anything. And if you don't say anything, I don't know. That's kind of shocking to me.
Yeah, I mean, not to just to like blow up the whole class here, because I know we have a material to go through, but I think that, and it's hard. And I can also say that both of these things I'm talking about were before the Me Too movement, which I think has sort of changed it's really changed things. I mean, I have so many Me Too stories. I could probably talk for hours, but, and I'm sure we all do.
Right.
But I think that it's like you balance it. Like, Jennifer, you were on your way home from school. I was on a plane going somewhere. And it's like, do you just, there's so much that it takes out of you to report some of this stuff sometimes. If it's like, oh my God, do I report this and then like go and fill out paperwork and do interviews, and and then you have to go through the process of proving it. And it's like, but you're right. We should, because like that's
Yeah, maybe it'll catch someone, maybe it'll get someone, off the street. I mean, who knows? But yeah, I agree with you. It's like, do you want to go through the quote unquote hassle of doing that, and quite honestly, probably to no
Right.
fruition. There's probably no end result other than you filed a paper, okay, whatever, and nothing's going to happen. So yeah, and we'll get into that when we cover sexual harassment and rape, and that very thing that you're saying. And so many rapes and sexual harassments are